Hey everybody, welcome back to the Messy Cook. So I did say I was going to do some soup recipes. So today I am making my husband's favorite split pea and ham soup. So I have my yellow split peas here. I am using the bone and some of the meat that we had left over from Thanksgiving. We didn't have to do a turkey this year, we did a Thanksgiving, which I've put in here. And I suppose I should have showed you before the pressure started building, but that's okay, I can show you after it's cooked. We put it in the pressure cooker here. And I'm pressure cooking the bone with the meat to the full line. So I filled it up with water to the full line. And I'm going to pressure cook that for 45 minutes. And what that's going to do is extract all the flavor, make that meat really tender so it all just falls apart. Then we'll remove the bone. I've also added in 1 carrot and 1 big stalk of celery, a couple of bay leaves, an onion, and some peppercorns. So we're going to come back when this is all cooked. And in the meantime, I will get the veggies that I want to put in the soup all prepped and ready to go. Okay, so pressure cooker is done, and we're going to let that naturally release the pressure on its own, which should take anywhere from 20 minutes to half an hour. If at a half an hour point it's not, then I will quick release the rest of the steam and release that so we can open it up and see what we have inside for broth. Next here, I'm going to just prep some of these veggies. So you see I have a great big bowl here full. I have 3 big carrots, 4 stalks of celery, 2 onions, and on my cutting board I have 3 cloves of garlics. They're kind of smushed up right now, but I'm going to chop these. Let's see here, these carrots and celery. I just want to show you the size that I do. We're going to have this for dinner tonight, and then whatever's left over I'm going to pressure can. So it's shelf stable and we can eat it through the winter. I'm not a massive fan of this, but I've always had it, from a can, which, is never near as good. So I'm going to cut these into maybe 1 centimeter cubes, and I'm going to cut the onions and the celery to the same size so everything cooks equally. So you can see here, this here is the size that we're looking for. Okay, so once you've got that size, we're just going to put everything back in the bowl. So I'm going to continue to chop the rest of these and set them aside and come back in a few minutes. Okay, so I have a small tip here. I've got the carrots and the celery done. I have a small tip for onions. Generally, onions, they have some oils in them, and when we cut them, we, as everybody says, cry your eyes water a little bit. I like to rinse mine. I think I showed you this tip before, but I give them a good rinse under cold water for all of my onions, which I've done already for the other ones. So I'm going to continue to cut these, and what that will do is will help so your eyes don't water quite as much. Little tip as well, if you're cutting an onion, cut it in half, peel it, cut it in half lengthwise, and then you're going to come down. And remember, we want to get about the same size pieces. You're going to come down there, and then you're going to cut with your fingers at a curve. You don't want them straight out or you're going to chop your fingertips off. So you're going to do it a curve and go straight down. Now if you have a really huge onion, I'm also going to chop this here because we really don't want to miss any pieces of it. If you have a really big onion, the other thing you can do when you're cutting, once you've gone through, so like I said, you're going to cut through, not all the way to the end, but just close to the core. Chop, 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 chop. Just going to chop that a little bit there. You can also cut into there a couple of times. This will help to make the mince a little bit better. I'm going to turn around. I just did that so you can see it. So again, we're going to put the knife against our knuckles and tuck our fingertips in. And again, just chop all the way through and you get a really, really lovely dice. I'm just going to run my knife through that because I think I kind of went through the end. So you're going to see overall though, you've got a nice sized dice here. And we're just going to add that in with the rest of our veggies. For the garlic, I'm going to put it through a garlic press, or you can just chop it coarsely as well. We don't want to put too much garlic in because we don't want to overpower it, but we definitely want a little bit of flavor. So I'll just continue on with these veggies. Okay, so instead of taking out my garlic press, I decided I'm just going to coarse chop this garlic. So I'm just going to put this in the middle of my bowl. So currently we have 4 stalks of celery, 3 large carrots, and 2 onions, and 3 heads of garlic, or 3 cloves, I should say, of garlic. So I'm going to set this aside and cover it. As soon as this is pressure released here in our pressure cooker over here, I'm going to take that out, strain the liquid into a pot, and let the meat and bone and whatnot cool a little bit. Then I'm going to pick through and take all the meat pieces out and put that back into the broth for our soup. At that time, we'll be adding in all of our veggies here. We're going to use yellow split peas is what I'm going to be doing. Probably a couple cups as that doubles. So I'll kind of see 2 to 3 cups of it depending how much broth I have. And we will go from there. So we'll be back to you as soon as we get that meat going. So you'll see I've got the split peas here. So I've poured them in this jar. We're going to fill it with water just to give this a really good rinse. And we just want to make sure that there's any yucky pieces out of there, but I think we're fine. I've kind of rinsed it a couple times already. This is about 3 cups. So I figure, you know what, we're making a big pot of soup. I'm just going to swirl through here. You'll see the water gets a little bit foggy. We do want to get rid of some of that. You get to the point where it looks like the peas are going to come out on their own. You want to just be sure you pour it through a sieve. And we'll give it one last little rinse for about half of it. So you're just going to do that with the whole amount of peas that you want to do. Like I said, 1 cup of split peas will cook into about 2 full cups of split peas. So like I said, this is going to be a larger soup. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to continue to rinse these and set them aside and get to the meat in a few minutes. 20 minutes have passed and the button isn't down, so I'm just pressure releasing this here. I don't know if you can see the steam coming out the top, but we're going to let that go until the button drops, and I'm going to strain out the bone in the meat. Okay, so the pressure button here has dropped down, so it's safe to open. So I'm going to turn it here, and remember when you open your Instant Pot or anything with super steam, you're going to lift it up and away so you do not burn yourself, because that will not be pleasant at all. So this is what we've got inside. So like I said, I put in a big stalk of celery, a big carrot, the ham bone with some ham. The bone is still here, a bunch of peppercorns, and an onion. So what I want to do is I'm going to fish out the bones and the big chunks of meat here. And we're going to get these into this little pan here. So we'll get this set down so you can see just a little bit better. So we're going to get that in here, all the chunks. You can see all the lovely meat. So this is going to be the meat that goes into the soup. So we're going to let this cool and then pick through all of that. So we'll throw in the carrots. The carrots and the celery that I put in earlier, that stuff is actually going to be just discarded. That's more for the flavoring for the soup broth. And we will try the soup broth. If it's too salty, I'll just add in some water and a little bit of chicken bouillon if I need to, but this might turn out well. I don't think we need to add any salt to this recipe, as ham is, because it's cured, it's generally pretty salty to begin with. So this is the majority, I think, of the chunks. I'll put some more there. So I like to get out as much as I can with the tongs, and then I will strain the rest into the pot that I'm going to cook the soup in. So we'll get to that in just 1 second. Okay, this is going to be super hot, so I put my oven mitts on here, and I'm just going to reach over and grab out the stock pot out of the pressure cooker. Like I said, I've gotten as much as I can of the big pieces out, and I just want to strain this through this fine strainer here. You can use a bigger one if you need. This one seems to work okay. And there we go. So you'll see all the bits. It's just going to catch all those peppercorns and little bits of meat and broth, and yeah, see odds and ends of pieces that I didn't get from the bottom. So we're just going to scrape that in there. I'll put these other little bits into the pan just to make sure I don't miss any good bits. And we're going to strain this here. This will also go in. So I have a decent amount of broth here, and it's probably not as much as I want. So I'm going to add in just some chicken stock. I'm going to taste it first, but just add in some chicken stock to bring it up to about this level here. And then we can add in all of our veggies and the ham as soon as I've got that all picked apart. So we're going to let this cool. I will start off by adding the veggies into the broth once I've added a little more chicken broth in, and we'll get our soup started. So I've added some chicken stock in there and brought the broth level up a little bit more here. So I've tasted it. It is not very salty, actually. I thought it would be more salty than it is. So I don't want to add any more salt right now because we're going to be adding that ham back in, and we can just balance with the salt at the end. So right now, for the soup to start, like I said, the ham I can just pop in. I am currently going to add in all the carrots onions, celery, and the garlic. This is also going to help flavor that broth. It won't add salt, obviously, to it, but surprisingly, with those flavors in there, that balances things out a little bit. So you'll get a little bit, it'll taste a little more full-bodied. You can put parsley in. I'm going to do just a teaspoon of thyme. This is just dried thyme. You can use fresh if you want, but dried is going to be fine for the amount of time that the soup is going to cook. I'm also going to add in my 3 cups of split peas. Now, if this ends up being too much, I'll just add more broth at the end. So we're going to throw that all in. We're going to let everything simmer. We're going to keep an eye on this, and I'm going to get to taking out all the meat off the bones, and we're going to add that in as well. Let's give this a quick stir here. I'm going to give everything a stir. I also want to add in some black pepper, because that's always nice with soup like this. So we'll give that a stir. I'll grind in as much pepper. You can add in as much as you like. I'll grind in, a good teaspoonful of it. Coarse or not coarse, whatever you prefer. Or you can just put in, if you just have regular pepper, you don't have the stuff to grind, that's completely fine too. So I've added that all in. I gave a little show of what this looks like inside our pot here. Everything is all in, and we're going to let that simmer for a little while while I get to picking apart the meat, and then we'll go from there. We'll be right back. Okay, so this has cooled down a little bit, so I'm just going to remove the bones. We don't want any fatty parts, but we want to be sure you pick through everything and get those nice meaty chunks. These are the meaty chunks you're going to want, about that size. Just break it apart with your fingers, and that's what we're going to use to go in the soup. If the pieces are a little bit too big, just break them down, chop them up, but you should be able to just break them apart like that. This is the best, best way to do it is using a pressure cooker. One, it takes all the flavor out of the bones and some of the flavor from the meat and helps make a delicious broth. And 2, it makes that meat just literally just fall apart. So this is really the best way to do it. You can also just do this on the stove if you don't have an Instapot. Just boil it. I put it on, I let it simmer, keep it simmering for 3 hours, 4 hours, something like that, and then just do the same method and strain everything, and let it cool, pick apart those meat bits, add it back in with all your ingredients, and you're all set. So I'm going to continue with the rest of this meat, and then we'll be adding that into our soup broth. Okay, so this is the last piece of meat I have here, so I'm just shredding this last little bit up. Now, some of these, that's probably too big of a piece that you want in soup. So what I'm going to do, if you do have some that are a little bit too big, I've just kind of shredded as best as I can in there. Use my fingers. What I like to do is I have these kitchen shears that I use only for my kitchen. So I'm just going to go through and just snip, 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 snip. Hopefully you can see that okay. And this will just kind of cut those shreds down into bite-sized pieces. It's not going to be exact, and I'm not going to get everything. Some of the pieces on the bottom are much smaller, but we want to get a little bit better uniform size, something that when you take a spoonful of soup, you're going to get a smaller piece. We'll give that a little mix around here, turn her over so we can see some of the bigger pieces, and again, just snip, snip, snip. You could do this with whatever scissors you have, but just be sure they're nice and clean. These ones I use for deboning chickens, and doing things like this, so cutting the meat up or whatever. So that looks pretty good for what I think we're doing here. So we're just going to bring this over and add this to our soup. Okay, so everything is simmering nicely here. We're going to add all of that ham in, so that's going to up the salt a little bit, so I'm going to scrape the rest of that in a second. We're going to give this a real nice stir, and we want to keep this simmering for at least an hour, hour and a half, to whatever works. You want to get it to the vegetables and the split peas are to the consistency that you want. You can see everything on the bottom here. It looks good. It smells amazing. Feel free to add other veggies in if you like. I think this is just simple, and this is going to be a nice hearty soup, but don't really want to overload it with too much. But again, like most of the recipes I do, it's all about your flavors. What do you like? If you don't like carrots, add parsnips. If you like parsnips, you want to add some turnip in there. Turnip would be another nice thing. This is a good fall soup. So I'm going to let this simmer for a little while, and we'll come back when it's just about ready. Okay, so I'm back, and this soup has been cooking for about an hour. It's doing quite well. As you can see here, this is all the split peas are still cooking. It's not quite done yet. What I've done is I've put some in a smaller pot at the back. This is what we're going to have for dinner tonight. I may need to add a little bit more broth or water, but I can do that and then just season it to taste for dinner. So that's going to be our dinner one, and I'm putting I put a loaf of bread on in our bread maker, so we'll have that with the soup tonight. This lovely pot here, I'm going to actually pressure can, so Randy will have, that's my husband, we will, or he should have, and me if I like it, we'll have some split pea soup for the winter time or whenever he wants. That will still, by pressure cooking in my Presto pressure cooker here, that will say, I don't know, 2 or 3 years at least, shelf stable, but I'm sure he'll have it gone before the next winter comes. And yeah, so we're going to get that pressure cooked. I'm not going to show that on this video, but I will come back when a little pot is done, and just going to keep that, I'm going to turn it down a little bit and just keep that simmering for now. And yeah, I'll show you when it's all set and ready to eat. Welcome back. So soup is finally done. I made a fresh loaf of bread in my bread maker and cut myself a nice slice here, a little bit thick, but that's okay. That's the way I like it. And the bread's nice and warm. So I'm just going to get myself a ladle or full of soup here, and I'm all set for supper. So let's see here. Here we go. So this is my dinner tonight. Beautiful couple slices of bread with a fresh, super delicious split pea and ham soup. I hope you try this recipe and enjoy. You have a great day. This is a good keep you warm. This will keep up to about a week in the fridge. So if you want to keep it in the fridge, you can also cool it to room temperature and freeze it in Ziploc bags, leave it in your freezer. Or if you want a pressure can, do the same thing I did and pressure can it away. So enjoy. Thanks for coming and visiting today. Be sure to subscribe to that page, hit the like button, share with your friends, and you have a great day. We'll see you soon.